Gene Hackman had one of those careers where you just knew he was going to be great every time he showed up. 2 Oscars, a stack of classics, and a reputation as one of the most solid, no-nonsense actors in the business. But even with all that success, one of his best performances, maybe his best, was in a movie that nobody saw. Eureka was a film that had everything going for it. A visionary director, a killer cast, a story packed with ambition. And then the studio completely fumbled it. They sat on it for 2 years, barely released it, and let it sink without a trace. The film follows a man named Jack McCann. He struck gold, literally, built an empire off of it. But years later, isolated on his own private island, he's surrounded by people who want a piece of what he has. And suddenly, all that wealth doesn't seem like such a blessing anymore. This should have been a major movie. It was directed by Nicolas, the guy behind Don't Look Now. The cast was stacked: Mickey Rourke, Joe Pesci, Teresa Russell, and Hackman right at the center, giving a performance that should have been talked about for years. But instead of pushing it, the studio freaked out. The MPAA slapped it with an X rating for violence, and suddenly, nobody at MGM and United Artists knew what to do with it. They stalled, delayed, second-guessed themselves, and by the time they finally dumped it into a handful of theaters, 2 years late, it was already dead. Off of a budget of $11 million, it didn't even make back $200,000 at the box office. And reactions were all over the place too. Terry Gilliam hated it. He literally walked out of the theater and said, "You're wasting too much of my life." Danny Boyle, on the other hand, thinks it's one of the greatest films ever made. He put it on his top 5 of all time and said it probably killed Roeg's career in Hollywood. But what really happened? Why did a movie that had everything going for it just vanish? Well, part of it was the studio being completely spineless. And behind the scenes, things weren't exactly smooth either. Hackman and Roeg had very different styles. Roeg liked to take his time, obsessing over lighting, reshooting scenes from every possible angle. Hackman worked fast, 1 or 2 takes, then move on, and he really didn't have the patience for sitting around talking about character motivation with his co-stars. He mostly kept to himself between scenes, and apparently the tension got bad enough that Roeg actually brought in Hackman's son just to keep things calm. Roeg was frustrated. He once said, "Financial considerations have taken entertainment, which should be emotional, cerebral, amusing, exhilarating, and made it mean simply distracting." That was in 1984, while he was still waiting for the studio to do something with his film. 4 decades later, not much has changed. The movie never got its due. As Roger Ebert once said, "It's a strange, perverse film about passion and greed, but Hackman's absolutely on fire in it." The guy could make anything watchable, but here, he's in full command. And even in a movie the studio buried, he might have given one of his best performances ever.